She entered the restaurant as a normal customer, but soon realized that something was wrong. The tense looks from the staff, the restrained movements, and then the crying from the back room. What she learned next shocked her. Subscribe so you don't miss new stories, and tell us in the comments what city you're from. The streets of Nashville glowed under the dim light of street lamps, the city alive with the soft hum of distant music, occasional bursts of laughter, and the steady stream of cars rolling down the avenue. Taylor Swift parked her car a short distance from the restaurant, taking a moment before stepping out. The night air was crisp, carrying the scents of fresh bread, seared meat, and autumn leaves. She pulled the hood of her sweatshirt up slightly, not to conceal herself completely, but just enough to blend in. This visit wasn't about attention. It was about seeing things for what they really were. She had opened this restaurant not just as an investment, but as a passion project, a place where people could gather, enjoy great food, and work in an environment that valued them. From the outside, the warm glow from the restaurant's large windows was inviting, silhouettes of diners moving against the backdrop of soft golden light. It looked just as she had envisioned it, but Taylor knew better than to judge a place by how it looked from the outside. As she stepped inside, the familiar ambiance welcomed her. The murmur of conversations mixed with the clinking of glasses and the occasional burst of laughter. The scent of freshly baked bread and roasted garlic filled the air, creating a sense of comfort. She made her way toward an empty table near the window, moving unnoticed through the crowd. At first glance, everything appeared normal. The restaurant was running smoothly. Servers weaved between tables with practiced ease. Bartenders moved swiftly behind the counter, pouring drinks with precision. The kitchen door swung open periodically, offering brief glimpses of the bustling activity inside. Everything seemed fine, but then she noticed the tension. The servers moved quickly, but there was an urgency to their steps that felt unnatural. Their smiles seemed practiced, their laughter strained. More than once, Taylor noticed the way they avoided direct eye contact, not just with customers, but with someone else. At the far end of the dining area, standing near the host's podium, was a tall man in a tailored navy blue suit. His posture was stiff, his arms crossed as he scanned the room like a general surveying a battlefield. His gaze followed the servers as they moved, sharp and calculating. Taylor watched as one of the servers, a young woman with light brown hair tied back neatly, accidentally spilled a small amount of water while refilling a glass. The moment it happened, she froze, her entire body tensing as if she had made a catastrophic mistake. She hurriedly wiped the spill with trembling hands, casting a nervous glance toward the man in the navy suit. He didn't say anything. He didn't need to. The look he gave her, calm, unwavering, and entirely devoid of patience, was enough. The young woman turned even paler than before, lowering her head and rushing back toward the kitchen. Taylor's stomach tightened. This wasn't the normal kind of workplace stress. She had worked in the industry before making it big. She knew what long shifts, sore feet, and rude customers felt like. This was different. This was fear. She kept observing, carefully, without making it obvious. The other servers moved around the restaurant with the same careful precision, as if they were performing under constant scrutiny. Some of them subtly adjusted their posture when walking past the man in the suit, as if bracing for impact. Others kept their heads down when they weren't directly engaging with customers. It was clear that this wasn't just a strict boss. This was someone who held control over the people working here, and not in a way that encouraged excellence, but in a way that instilled fear. Taylor tapped her fingers against the table, her thoughts racing. She had always believed that a workplace should be more than just a job. It should be a space where people felt safe, where they were treated with respect. If something was happening here, if the staff was working under conditions that made them afraid to make even the smallest mistake, then something was very, very wrong. Her gaze flickered back toward the navy-suited man. He hadn't moved from his spot, still scanning the room with quiet authority. Servers continued to move around him like chess pieces, aware of every step they took in his presence. She needed to find out exactly what was going on. A low murmur of conversation caught her attention. Not from the dining area, but from the side hallway near the kitchen. It was barely noticeable over the general noise of the restaurant, but now that she was paying attention, she could hear it. A voice, soft, strained. Another voice, responding in hushed, urgent tones. It wasn't the usual hurried chatter of employees exchanging quick updates during a rush. There was something else in the tone, something private, something desperate. Taylor casually stood up, adjusting her hoodie as she walked toward the bar. From there, she had a clearer view of the hallway leading toward the back. The restaurant's break room was down that way, just past the entrance to the kitchen, and the door to that break room was slightly ajar. Through the narrow opening, she caught a glimpse of a young woman standing near a metal counter, her head bowed, fingers gripping the edge as if trying to steady herself. Her shoulders shook slightly, and from this angle, Taylor could see her wiping at her face quickly, as though trying to erase any evidence of tears. Standing beside her was a young man, his expression tense as he spoke in a low voice. "You don't have to do this," he was saying. The girl shook her head, inhaling sharply before whispering something in response. Taylor couldn't make out the exact words, but she caught enough. "What choice do I have?" A chill ran down Taylor's spine. She turned her head slightly, glancing back toward the dining area, toward the man in the navy blue suit. He was still there, watching. Taylor didn't know the full story yet. She didn't know what was happening behind closed doors, what kind of hold this man had over his employees, or why this girl looked like she was on the verge of breaking. But she knew one thing for certain. She wasn't leaving this restaurant until she found out. The soft murmur of voices coming from the break room didn't fade. Taylor lingered near the bar, pretending to check her phone as she listened. The restaurant's steady rhythm continued around her. Silverware clinking, quiet conversation, the low hum of background music, but her focus was entirely on the hallway. The girl inside the break room was still trembling. She wiped at her face quickly, as if desperate to make sure no one saw her cry. The young man beside her kept his voice low, urgent but cautious. Taylor caught another fragment of their conversation. "You don't have to do this." The girl shook her head, her grip on the metal counter tightening. "What choice do I have?" Her voice was barely above a whisper, but Taylor heard the weight in those words. They weren't about an exhausted employee wanting to quit. This wasn't just about a bad shift or a difficult customer. There was something deeper here, something that made the girl's entire body tense as she spoke. Taylor's grip tightened around the edge of the bar. She'd been in the industry long enough before her music career took off to know the difference between normal job stress and something more sinister. This was fear. She forced herself to breathe evenly. If she reacted too fast, she might scare them into silence. If she walked into that break room now, they might shut down completely. She needed to be careful. For now, she turned back toward the dining area, moving to her table with measured steps. Her tea had gone cold. She didn't care. She took a slow sip anyway, using the moment to observe. The manager in the navy blue suit was still near the host's podium, his arms crossed, scanning the restaurant. His presence was suffocating. The way the staff moved around him, the way they stiffened when he was near, it was all too familiar. He was the kind of boss who thrived on control, the kind who never needed to raise his voice to make people afraid. Taylor saw him glance toward the kitchen doors, his gaze lingering for a second too long. He knew someone was back there, and he didn't like it. She watched as the young man from the break room finally stepped out. His jaw was tight, his movements stiff as he walked back onto the floor, tucking a notepad into the pocket of his apron. His hands were fidgeting. He looked rattled. Taylor recognized an opportunity when she saw one. She stood, casually making her way toward the server station near the back of the restaurant, where he was stacking plates and trying to steady himself. She reached for a pen near the counter. "Hey," she said lightly, "got a pen?" The young man, Tyler, according to his name tag, glanced up, startled. He quickly grabbed one and handed it to her, trying to mask his unease. Taylor didn't walk away. She kept her voice low, her expression neutral, giving him space. "I couldn't help but notice," she said, "your friend seems upset." Tyler stiffened. His fingers tightened around the stack of plates in front of him. His eyes darted toward the manager, still standing at the front of the restaurant, then back down to the counter. His posture screamed hesitation. Taylor waited. Finally, after a long pause, he exhaled. "She's not fine," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. Taylor studied his face. He wanted to talk. He just didn't know if he could. She leaned slightly against the counter, keeping her posture relaxed. "Is it a customer issue?" The hesitation was brief but telling. "No," Tyler muttered. It's not." His eyes flicked again toward the front of the restaurant, toward the man in the navy blue suit. Taylor followed his gaze. The manager was still watching, still controlling. Tyler swallowed hard and shook his head. It's her personal business. It was a lie, not because Tyler wanted to mislead her, but because he was afraid. Taylor had seen it before. Employees trapped in bad situations, stuck in a job they couldn't afford to leave, too scared to speak up. "How long has she been working here?" Taylor asked, keeping her voice light. Tyler answered automatically. "A little over a year." Then he tensed. Taylor nodded slightly, as if the conversation were casual. "Does she like it here?" Tyler let out a short, humorless chuckle. "She doesn't," he admitted, "but she can't afford to leave." And there it was. The real problem. The girl in the break room wasn't just stressed. She was trapped. Taylor's stomach tightened. This wasn't just about a bad work environment. This was something worse. She was about to ask another question when the air around them shifted. Tyler stiffened. Taylor didn't need to turn around to know why. The manager was walking toward them. His presence was heavy, filling the space like a storm cloud. His voice was smooth but firm. "Everything okay over here?" Tyler immediately dropped his gaze, busied himself with the plates in front of him. "Yes, sir. Just helping a customer." Taylor turned and finally faced the man up close. He was in his mid-40s, crisp dress shirt, neatly combed hair. His features were sharp, polished, but cold. This wasn't just a tough boss. This was someone who knew exactly how much control he had over the people who worked for him, and he enjoyed it. The name tag on his shirt read, Rick Calloway. "Can I help you with something?" Calloway asked, polite but edged. Taylor smiled casually. "Just getting a pen. Tyler here was kind enough to help me out." Calloway didn't break eye contact. "Good," he said, clapping Tyler on the shoulder a little too firmly. "Let's stay focused on work." Tyler nodded quickly, his eyes locked on the plates in front of him. "Yes, sir." Taylor clenched her jaw but didn't react. Not yet. She thanked Tyler, stepped away, and felt Calloway's eyes on her the entire time. Her mind was already made up. She wasn't leaving. Not yet. Not until she figured out exactly what was happening in this restaurant. She stepped outside for a moment, letting the cool night air ease her frustration. From where she stood, it probably looked like she was just checking her phone. In reality, she was thinking hard. Something wasn't adding up. Emily was terrified. Tyler was hesitant. And Calloway, he had the look of a man who thrived on control. Taylor had dealt with people like him before. People in power who thought they could manipulate those beneath them without consequence. She needed more information, and if she wanted the truth, she had to talk to someone who wasn't afraid. As if the universe was working in her favor, the bartender from earlier stepped outside, leaning against the building, scrolling through his phone. Probably on break. Taylor saw her opening. She walked up casually, hands in her pockets. "Long night?" The bartender looked up, startled, then relaxed when he recognized her. "Yeah," he sighed. "Fridays are always nuts." Taylor nodded, leaning against the wall beside him. "Mind if I ask you something?" The bartender hesitated but shrugged. "Sure." Taylor kept her voice light. "Your manager, Calloway, what's he like?" The bartender's expression darkened. It was quick, just a flicker, but Taylor caught it. He hesitated, then lowered his voice. "He makes Emily stay late." Taylor's muscles tensed. "She's the only one?" The bartender nodded. "Yeah, and he's always talking to her like she owes him something." Taylor's grip tightened. She'd seen this before, and now she knew exactly what she needed to do. Taylor stood outside the restaurant, the crisp night air cooling the heat that had built in her chest. The conversation with the bartender confirmed what she already suspected. This wasn't just a case of a bad boss, it was something more. Something calculated, something predatory. She had seen enough of the entertainment industry to recognize the pattern. Men like Calloway didn't need to be loud or aggressive. They didn't have to make outright threats. They worked in subtler ways, manipulating, applying pressure, making their targets feel like there was no way out. And that was exactly what had happened to Emily. She took a slow breath, rolling her shoulders before stepping back inside. The restaurant had settled slightly, the dinner rush winding down. There were still tables occupied, conversations still flowing, but the frantic energy had faded. Servers moved with a bit more ease, relieved that the busiest part of the night was over. But for Emily, for Tyler, for the bartender who had just confirmed her fears, there was no end to the pressure. Not as long as Calloway was still here. Taylor walked toward the bar, keeping her posture relaxed, unhurried. She didn't want to draw attention to herself. Not yet. The bartender had gone back inside, wiping down the counter as he worked through the last few orders of the night. She slid onto a bar stool and tapped the counter lightly. He looked up, immediately cautious. "Another tea?" "Just water," she said, "and some company, if you don't mind." His hesitation lasted only a moment before he set a glass in front of her, leaning slightly against the counter. "You ask a lot of questions," he murmured, not unkindly. Taylor tilted her head. "And you have a lot of answers." He exhaled through his nose, glancing toward the restaurant floor. Calloway was still near the host stand, talking to a server, his stance exuding casual authority. "I don't want trouble," the bartender said. "Neither do I." She tapped a finger against the rim of her glass. But I don't walk away from it either." His lips pressed together, and for a moment she thought he might shut down completely. But then he shook his head, muttering something under his breath. "You have no idea how long this has been going on," he finally said. Taylor stayed silent, letting him speak. "Emily's not the first," he continued, voice low. "He's been here for 3 years. The turnover rate for female servers? Insanely high. They don't talk about it, they just leave. I don't know how many of them quit because of him, but I know it's more than one." Taylor's fingers curled into her palm. "What about Emily?" she asked. The bartender swallowed, his grip tightening around the rag in his hands. "She doesn't say much, but you can see it. Every time he calls her into his office, she goes stiff. The way she tenses when he's near, the way she avoids being alone with him. I know what that looks like." So did Taylor. She had spent too many years in an industry filled with powerful men who thought they could take whatever they wanted without consequence. She had seen it happen to friends, colleagues. She had fought against it, spoken up when it mattered. But the worst part was always the fear. The way victims convinced themselves there was no way out. Emily was afraid. Tyler was afraid. Even the bartender, standing here speaking in low whispers, was afraid. Calloway had created that fear. Taylor inhaled deeply, pushing down the anger boiling beneath her skin. She needed a plan. She couldn't just storm into the back office and drag Calloway out by his tie. Not yet. She needed more. Proof. A way to take him down so he couldn't just slither into another job and start all over again. She tapped her glass again, considering. "I need to talk to Emily," she said finally. The bartender looked doubtful. "That won't be easy." Taylor glanced toward the restaurant floor. Emily was still working, moving between tables with quiet efficiency, her posture rigid. But there was a weariness in her movements, a tightness in her shoulders that hadn't been there earlier in the night. Calloway was still near the entrance, but his attention was elsewhere. This might be the only chance she got. She stood, grabbing her water, and moved toward the back where Emily was clearing a table. The young woman glanced up as Taylor approached, clearly not expecting a customer to speak to her directly. She started to offer a polite smile, but something in Taylor's expression must have stopped her. Taylor set her glass down on the table, keeping her voice low. "I need to talk to you," she said. Emily immediately stiffened. "I'm working." "I know," Taylor said, "but this is important." The flicker of fear in Emily's eyes was unmistakable. She darted a quick glance toward the front of the restaurant, and Taylor knew exactly who she was looking for. "He's not watching," Taylor reassured her. "Not right now." Emily swallowed, but the tension in her posture didn't ease. "I don't know what you think is going on," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "but you should stay out of it." Taylor leaned in slightly. "I know about the late-night shifts. I know about the way he treats you. I know you're afraid." Emily's breath hitched. You don't have to say anything," Taylor cut in gently. "I just need you to know you're not alone." Emily's fingers clenched around the hem of her apron. She looked like she wanted to believe that, like she wanted to let go of whatever she had been holding in. But fear had a way of silencing people, making them believe they were powerless. Taylor saw the moment she shut down. Emily straightened, forcing a tight smile onto her face. "I appreciate your concern," she said, loud enough for anyone nearby to hear. "But I have tables to serve." Taylor didn't stop her as she turned away, but she saw the way Emily's hand shook as she reached for the tray. Calloway's presence had done that. Taylor exhaled slowly, forcing herself to remain calm. This wasn't over. She turned, prepared to head back to her seat, when a shadow loomed beside her. Rick Calloway. His expression was polite, but his eyes were sharp with irritation. "Is there a problem here?" Taylor didn't immediately turn to face him. Instead, she watched the way Emily flinched at the sound of his voice, how her fingers curled into fists. That reaction told Taylor everything she needed to know. She finally turned, keeping her face neutral. "Just having a conversation." Calloway smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Well, Emily has a job to do. She doesn't have time for private discussions." Taylor caught the way Emily shrank slightly at the word private. That was all the confirmation she needed. She squared her shoulders slightly, making herself just a little taller, her presence a little more solid. "Actually," Taylor said, her voice steady, "I think we should have a conversation right now." Calloway's smirk faltered. "Excuse me?" Taylor reached into her pocket and pulled out her wallet. She flipped it open, revealing her executive ownership credentials for the restaurant group. The restaurant fell into stunned silence. Servers froze. Customers glanced over, sensing something bigger than a simple work dispute was happening. Calloway's face drained of color. "My name is Taylor Swift," she said, her voice calm but firm, "and you and I need to talk." The restaurant had fallen into an unnatural silence. Conversations had dulled. Forks hovered in midair and eyes darted between Taylor and the man standing in front of her. The weight of the moment pressed into the space around them. Calloway's face remained composed, but the color had drained from his skin, leaving him paler than before. His eyes flicked toward her wallet, toward the credentials displayed in clear, irrefutable proof of her authority over the very establishment he had ruled with quiet tyranny. For the first time that night, he was the one who looked unsure. Taylor saw the way his fingers twitched, the way his jaw locked as he processed the reality of the situation. He wasn't dealing with an ordinary customer anymore. He wasn't dealing with an employee too scared to fight back. He was dealing with the owner. And that meant his power had just been ripped away from him in an instant. He recovered quickly, at least on the surface. His polite smile returned, but it was tighter now, less confident. He exhaled through his nose, shaking his head as if this were nothing more than a misunderstanding. "Miss Swift," he started, his voice carefully measured. "I wasn't aware you were visiting tonight." "I know," Taylor said flatly. Calloway let out a light chuckle, the kind people used when trying to diffuse tension, but the nervous edge behind it betrayed him. "Well, this is certainly a surprise. I assume you're here on business." Taylor didn't blink. "I'm here because I don't like what I've been seeing." Calloway's smile faltered just enough for her to notice. He recovered quickly, straightening his posture. "I'm not sure what you mean." Taylor turned her head slightly, glancing toward Emily, who stood frozen behind her tray. The girl looked like she wanted to disappear. The other servers watched from a cautious distance, shifting nervously as if unsure whether to step forward or keep their heads down. Even the bartender had stopped working, his hands resting on the counter as he observed the confrontation. Taylor met Calloway's gaze again. "Emily," she said clearly, "why don't you go take a break?" Emily's eyes widened slightly. She glanced at Calloway, her expression uncertain. The manager's jaw tensed, but he couldn't argue. Not now, not when everyone was watching. He gave a small nod, and Emily, looking relieved and terrified all at once, quickly slipped toward the back. Taylor took a step closer to Calloway, He didn't back away, but she saw the flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. He wasn't used to being challenged, at least not by someone with real authority. "We need to talk," she said again, this time quieter, lower, just for him to hear. Calloway held his ground. "Of course," he said smoothly. "My office?" She nodded. "Now." They moved toward the back, the tension in the restaurant still thick. Employees exchanged glances as Taylor followed Calloway down the hallway, past the kitchen, past the break room where Emily had been crying earlier. Taylor felt every muscle in her body tighten as she walked. She was about to step into a room alone with a man who had built his authority on intimidation. But she wasn't intimidated, she was furious. Calloway pushed open the office door, gesturing for her to enter first. She did, but she didn't sit. The small room was neat, organized with a polished desk and a computer screen still glowing. A few papers were stacked neatly in a tray, and a set of keys rested beside them. It looked like a normal office, but the air inside was heavy. Calloway shut the door behind them, and when he turned, his face had changed. The polite mask had slipped, and in its place was something colder, something calculating. "All right," he said, his voice no longer pretending to be friendly. "Why don't you tell me what exactly you think is happening here?" Taylor didn't flinch. She crossed her arms, staring him down. "I know about the late-night shifts. I know about the way you've been treating Emily, and I know you think you can get away with it." Calloway scoffed, shaking his head. "That's ridiculous. If Emily has complaints, she's welcome to bring them up to me directly. I run a professional establishment. If she's struggling with her workload, that's on her." Taylor narrowed her eyes. "So, it's just a coincidence that she's the only one who's ever asked to stay late? That she's the only one who looks terrified every time you walk past her?" Calloway's jaw clenched. "She's a sensitive girl. Some people can't handle pressure." Taylor pulled out her phone and, with a single tap, played the recording. Emily's voice, raw and shaken, filled the small office. "If I don't do what he says, I'm gone." Then Tyler's hushed, urgent reply, "You can't let him. He doesn't own you." The sound of Calloway's own breath hitching was almost satisfying. He paled, his confidence cracking for the first time. "You should have known better," Taylor said, her voice dangerously calm. "You've been playing this game for a long time, haven't you? Preying on employees who need their jobs the most, making them feel trapped." Calloway's hands twitched at his sides. "This is a misunderstanding." "No," Taylor cut him off. "This is a pattern." Calloway was breathing harder now, panic creeping into his expression. He tried again, his voice weaker this time. "Miss Swift, I assure you, I have always conducted myself professionally." "Save it," Taylor snapped. "I'm not here for your excuses." She pulled out her phone again, this time dialing a number. Calloway's mouth opened, then closed. He knew. Taylor pressed the phone to her ear. "This is Taylor Swift," she said clearly. "I need HR on the line immediately." Calloway stood frozen. "You're done," she told him simply. "You will never work in this industry again." The words hit him like a punch. He swallowed hard, but there was nothing he could say. Not anymore. Taylor stepped towards the door, pausing only for a moment before glancing back at him. "And if you even think about trying this somewhere else," she said quietly, "I'll make sure you never get the chance." Then she walked out. The tension in the restaurant was still thick, but now it was different. People weren't afraid anymore. They were waiting, watching, hoping. Taylor exhaled, then looked directly at Emily, who stood near the break room, wringing her hands. "He's gone," Taylor said softly. "You're safe." Emily's lips parted slightly, her breath catching. For the first time that night, her shoulders relaxed. Behind her, Tyler and the bartender exchanged stunned glances. The other employees hesitated, as if unsure whether to believe what they had just witnessed. Taylor turned to them. "From now on, this restaurant is under direct review," she said firmly. "We'll be making changes, not just replacing Calloway, but making sure no one like him ever gets this kind of power again." Emily wiped at her eyes, her voice shaky. "What happens next?" Taylor met her gaze. "You tell me." Emily stared at her, processing the words. Then, for the first time in over a year, she stood a little taller. The silence that followed was not the same tense quiet that had filled the restaurant before. It was heavier, layered with uncertainty, as if the employees were still trying to understand what had just happened. Calloway was gone. The man who had controlled this place with nothing more than a look, a whispered word, a subtle threat. He had been removed in a matter of minutes. But fear didn't disappear as quickly as a person did. It lingered, clung to the air like the ghost of something once powerful. Taylor could see it in their faces. Emily, standing near the break room, her hands still trembling slightly at her sides. Tyler, shifting his weight from foot to foot, glancing at the other employees as if waiting for one of them to say something first. The bartender, still behind the counter, his grip tight around a bar towel, his eyes cautious. They were free, but they didn't quite believe it yet. Taylor exhaled slowly, centering herself before speaking. "You've all been working under someone who didn't deserve his position," she said, keeping her voice steady, even. "That changes now." The words hung there for a moment. Some of them glanced at each other, hesitant, uncertain. Others dropped their gazes, as if afraid to acknowledge what had just happened. Emily was the first to speak. "What happens next?" Her voice was small, careful. Not distrustful, but cautious, as if she didn't want to get her hopes up too soon. As if she knew from experience that promises didn't always mean safety. Taylor studied her, then looked at the rest of the staff. They were waiting. "You tell me," she said. Emily's lips parted slightly, surprise flickering across her face. For so long, she had been used to being told what to do, to taking orders, to accepting that her voice didn't matter, to believing that no one in power would ever ask her opinion, let alone value it. But now she had a choice. She swallowed, glancing toward Tyler, then toward the other employees. A few of them nodded subtly, as if urging her to say what she needed to say. She took a breath, steadied herself. She hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "I don't want anyone else to go through this. Not here, not anywhere." Taylor nodded once. "They won't." She turned her attention back to the rest of the staff. "From now on, this restaurant is under direct review," she said. "We're not just replacing Calloway. We're making sure no one else like him ever gets this kind of power again." The employees remained quiet, listening. "This isn't just about one person," Taylor continued. "It's about the way things have been run here, the way you've been treated, the way people have been afraid to speak up." A beat passed. Then Tyler cleared his throat, stepping forward slightly. "Sir, I don't mean to overstep, but—" He hesitated, then squared his shoulders. "This isn't just about Calloway." Taylor nodded, encouraging him to go on. "The way things work here," he said carefully, "it's not just one bad manager. It's the pressure, the way we're treated, the fear of speaking up. It's bigger than just this restaurant." Nate, the bartender, nodded in agreement. "A lot of us feel like we have no choice but to put up with it," he added. The second we complain, we're out of a job. Emily looked down, guilt flickering across her face. I wanted to leave so many times, she admitted quietly, but I couldn't afford to, and I thought, maybe this was normal. Taylor's jaw tightened. This was why she went undercover. Not because of profit margins, not because of performance reviews, because the real problems were the ones hidden beneath the surface. That stops today. She looked at the employees again, at the weight they carried, the exhaustion they had accepted as just part of the job. I don't just want to fix this restaurant, she said, her voice firm. I want to fix the system. A few of them exchanged glances, uncertain but intrigued. And I'll need your help to do that, she continued. That means transparency. That means trust. That means if something is wrong, you speak up. Emily still looked uncertain. And if we do, she asked, will anyone actually listen? Taylor met her eyes. I will. Emily held her gaze for a long moment, searching for any sign that these words were just empty promises. But Taylor had never been one for meaningless gestures. She meant every single word. Finally, Emily nodded, and for the first time that night, she looked like she believed it. Taylor sat in her car, parked just down the street from the restaurant. The interior was quiet, the soft hum of the engine the only sound. Through the windshield, she could still see the building, its warm glow standing out against the dark Nashville streets. It looked the same as it had a few hours ago. To anyone passing by, nothing had changed. But inside, everything had. The last of the employees were locking up for the night. She watched as Emily stepped out, flanked by Tyler and Nate. They weren't rushing to leave like they had somewhere better to be. They lingered, talking in low voices, their postures more relaxed than before. It was subtle, but Taylor could see it. A shift, a weight lifted. She let out a slow breath, leaning back against the seat. It had been a long night, but for them, it had been a long year. Maybe longer. This was just one restaurant, one manager, one situation. But how many more were out there? How many more places just like this, where employees worked in fear, trapped by the very jobs they needed to survive? How many Emilys had come before this one? How many had left, thinking they had no choice? Too many. Taylor had spent years building things, albums, tours, moments that connected people. She had built this restaurant with the same care, the same vision. A place that was supposed to be safe. And yet, even in something she had created, something had gone terribly wrong. She had read the reports. The numbers had looked good. Profits were steady. Customer reviews were positive. But none of that had told the real story. None of it had revealed what was happening in the quiet moments, in the break room, in the fear behind an employee's eyes. Being a leader wasn't just about creating something successful. It was about the people inside it. And she had almost missed it. Not anymore. She reached for her phone, her fingers moving over the screen with purpose. She pulled up a contact, one of her corporate oversight managers, and started typing. Full internal review. Not just this location. All of them. Effective immediately. She hesitated for a fraction of a second, then added one more line. I want direct reports, not just numbers. I want to know what's happening behind the scenes. I want to talk to the employees. She hit send. The message delivered with a quiet chime. A small action, but the first step in something bigger. Through the windshield, she saw Emily laugh at something Tyler said. It wasn't much, a small, hesitant laugh, but it was real. Taylor exhaled, setting her phone down. This was only the beginning. She turned the key, the car's engine humming to life, and then she drove away. knowing there was still so much more work to be done. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. Check out more videos on the channel and feel free to share this one with others.